Does the Paris Agreement spell the end of your industry? All fossil fuel industries have been too slow on the uptake. Does Statoil drill for tar sands oil? No. And fracking? What impact does that have on global warming? This is too little too late. Now we have a climate change denier-in-chief in Donald Trump. Was his election greeted with a cheer? The Paris Agreement on climate change poses a major challenge to fossil fuel industries. Here to discuss that with me today in a no-holds-barred discussion is Bjørn Otto Sverdrup, the head of sustainability at Statoil. Bjørn, welcome.
Thanks.
Statoil is a Norwegian multinational and the 11th largest oil and gas company in the world. Congratulations for that. Does the Paris Agreement spell the end of your industry?
Absolutely not. So I think the challenge is more the one on climate change and how to provide energy to people. And in our company, we see the Paris Agreement as part of the solution, and it's a very important part of the solution and not the problem in itself.
But I mean, now we have a climate change denier-in-chief in Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, the fossil fuel industry has a friend in the White House now, doesn't it? Was his election greeted with a sigh of relief, a cheer?
The US politics, and I mean, it's a democracy, they get to vote. So inside our company, at least, we're saying we don't spend time on debating climate change. We have decided let's act on it and be part of that solution. So for us, that means to both reduce our own emissions, but also to grow in new energy and be part of the energy transformation and even try to shape it.
So do you monitor your carbon emissions? What were they last year, and what sort of impact does that have on global warming?
No, so our emissions are around 14.8 million tons, quite a fairly high number. Glad to see that it was 600,000 tons less last year than the year before, so showing that we're on the right track. And we just recently launched an ambition to cut it with another 3 million tons.
But I mean, the industry, all fossil fuel industries, have been too slow on the uptake. This is all a little bit too little too late, isn't it, if we want to cut global warming and reach the target of the Paris Agreement?
No, so I think there is a balance. So on the one hand side, we're providing energy to millions of people. So you and I and all consumers are using energy as well. So we need to see a change of consumption, patterns of consumption of energy. And then, of course, you also need to see a change on the supply side on trying to reduce the carbon intent. So we would like to continue to produce gas, oil in a very environmentally friendly way, and also to produce...
Can you produce oil and gas in an environmentally friendly way?
Absolutely. So I think,
why isn't everyone doing it?
No, that's a good question. I think the big challenge when related to the energy transformation, or actually to become a low carbon world, is about all our economic activities needs to be done with less use of carbon, less use of energy. So we try at least to, for every barrel of gas that we produce or oil that we produce, to use as little energy as possible. So indeed, the biggest field that we're developing now, we decided to run that on hydropower, fully renewables.
I mean, you also had a carbon sequestration scheme, didn't you?
Correct.
And is that still running?
Absolutely, and we've been running it for 20 years. This is what other people talk about, carbon capture and storage facilities. So what we're doing is capturing 1 million tons of CO2 each year and depositing in the geological layers for a near permanent time, proven it can stay safe. So we've already taken away 20 million tons of that.
Why is it only 20 million tons? I mean, you're the 26th largest company by profit in the world. Why don't you have carbon sequestration schemes everywhere?
So I think it's both on the technology side. You need to have both cheaper technology and also more sophisticated technology. But you know the biggest challenge? Nobody have a real incentive to get rid of carbon or CO2. Well, so you need to have a price on CO2, because otherwise you're not going to be willing to invest to take care of the CO2.
But why do you need the ETS when, you know, if we have the leaders of all the world governments saying we need to get to a 0% carbon future?
No, so the EU ETS, the European kind of quota scheme, is very important because it sets that in this European space we have a journey to say let's reduce emissions by around 40%. And then we can do activity inside, and then over time it will be reduced. So for us, that's a very important pillar. But what we have seen is that for now, the price on the quotas isn't sufficient to really shift behavior. For instance, to really...
But it isn't sufficient to shift your behavior.
Well, you know, in Norway we have another carbon tax as well, and combine the carbon tax with the EU ETS, and it actually has led us to invest in these very forward-looking carbon capture and storage technologies.
I mean, but do you agree that oil and gas demand will drop in the coming decades as a result of these moves towards climate-friendly policy?
So looking at the future of the oil and gas demand it's quite difficult to predict. But most scenarios suggest that oil demand, even in the 2-degree scenarios, will flatten out. But it won't drop off overnight. It probably will be quite some demand for decades to come. And for gas, you see the same, even in 2-degree scenarios.
2-degree scenario is also quite dangerous.
Well, I guess that's the recommended path, and it might be risky, but I mean it's also quite ambitious. The Paris Agreement and the countries haven't yet agreed on activities that would take us to that path.
And why are you, as a company, still drilling and investing in assets, which I guess that comes also with the risk of carbon lock-in? Once you've built these things, they've got to carry on producing for decades to come.
Yeah, so why do we explore? Why do we look for more oil and gas? Don't we have enough already? Mm-hmm. The reason is that even in 2-degree scenarios, you see that there is a need, there is a market, and there's 9 billion people on the world in a couple of decades. They would need energy. Where should that oil and gas come from? And existing fields are depleting each year by 3 to 6%. So we probably would need to find some more deposits. That's why we're exploring. And we believe in the kind of continuation, not kind of on and off. And you see there's so much cyclicality in the oil and gas industry, and they believe in a stable kind of pattern of activity.
But that stable pattern of activity will be contributing to global warming.
No, so it's not the exploration activity itself that contributes to global warming. It's when you and your viewers and others and myself are using the energy.
So it's the consumer's fault?
No, so yeah, I think you cannot point fingers to only one here, but I think we need responsible governments, responsible consumers and companies. And you cannot fix only one part of the equation.
I just want to bring up your Johan Sverdrup oil field. You know, this is the largest North Sea discovery in decades. Yeah. I believe the peak production is 660,000 barrels a day. I mean, are there any sort of projects of similar ambition and size that Statoil is doing, say, like a wind farm? You know, it seems there's far more investment going into the fossil fuels than the renewables.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people actually see us within the oil and gas and energy business as having a climate leadership position. But still, we would like to improve. And last week, I believe we presented a platform that is actually going to be seen as a big step forward. So what we did then is we announced that we're going to reduce our emissions very significantly, 3 million tons. That's like removing 1.5 million cars off the road. And then we're going to invest in renewables, really stepping it up. So quadrupling our investments to potentially reach $2 billion a year.
That's not a lot of money for you guys, though, is it?
Well, it's going to provide electricity to 5 million households. I don't think there's that many other companies are investing at this scale into renewables. And then thirdly, and I think actually that's the most important, we're changing the way we run our company. We don't see ourselves only as an oil and gas company. We see ourselves as an energy company, and making sure that the climate and the Paris Accord is embedded into our strategy, our vision, our technical requirements, or key performance indicators. Having as close an eye on climate and emissions as we do on costs and investments and break-evens.
But are you doing this because it makes business sense, or are you doing it because you're such nice guys?
It's good that you think we're nice guys, but we believe this will make us even fitter for the future.
I mean, does Statoil drill for tar sands oil anywhere in the world?
No, we don't.
No? And fracking?
So we are involved in the US onshore oil and gas activity, and there we do some fracking. Yeah.
But how does that sort of chime with your reputation for sustainability?
That can be well done. So we have a very close eye on the environmental implications on fracking, and we believe that we are able now to limit the use of chemicals, limit the water usage. So we believe that's both a very sustainable business, it's a responsible business, and bring great benefits to the customers. Have in mind the climate emissions in the US is at the lowest level since the 1990s. That's only been driven by the...
Well, that's going to change. The emissions are going to go up with Trump.
No, I don't think so. These are market dynamics, and it's really a profound change. In the US, they've been successful in driving out coal and using more natural gas. And I think that's what should happen in Europe as well.
But Trump digs coal. He has that on his campaign posters.
Yeah, but have a look at, last week there was this amazing news coming out from Britain.
It's about time.
Yeah, but it was the CO2 emissions in the UK. Was it at lowest level since, when?
No, tell me.
120 years, since the age of Victoria, 1894. And why is that? Well, they've been able to reduce coal, use more natural gas, bring more renewables in, and also with the interplay with natural gas, allowing that development to happen. And also you see the benefits of a carbon price. So to me, that was a very inspiring news because it shows that it is possible to reduce emissions. And in particular, if you remove the worst part of this, coal. And I think I'm surprised to don't see that the same focus on reducing coal in continental Europe.
You're definitely saying all of the right things. But at the same time, your company is looking to drill in the Arctic, which is highly controversial. I believe also you're looking to drill on the Great Australian Bight. There's a huge environmental risk, isn't there? And there's a reputational risk, like we saw with the Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're not a company of talkers. So for 40 years, I think we've been very sincere to try to walk the talk and to take care of the environment. It is a very integrated part of our company, and I think we've been proven that we've been able to develop our business with coexistence with fisheries and nature and in a responsible way. And when it comes to climate issue, that's a very serious issue for us. We take a great effort in trying to understand that and trying to minimize our own emissions. That's also why we're embedding this component fully into our business strategy, from our strategy ambition to results to executive pay to technical requirements. So for us, this is not rhetorics. So, but of course, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop all activity. So we still believe doing drilling continue to do drilling in, you say the Arctic, but in the northern waters of Norway. We've been doing that for 40 years. And we believe we can continue to do that in a very, thoughtful, careful, risk-based approach. And we see that the environmental conditions there are as benign or even more benign than in the UK British Shelf, for instance.
Do Statoil receive subsidies from the Norwegian government?
I think that's to putting it upside down. So our tax rate is around 80%. So, and last year we paid $6.5 billion in taxes. So no, we don't get subsidies.
But Norway's got a large renewables sector, hydroelectric, geothermal, and wind. Is that for domestic consumption or for export?
No, it's amazing. So we have the waterfalls in the fjords, so allowing us to nearly have a completely renewable electricity system. And
domestically.
Domestic.
So isn't it sort of the case that you have domestically this 100% lovely clean energy, and then you're exporting a polluting fossil fuel to the rest of Europe?
No, I think that's not correct. So we're over the last years we opened up the window then on the renewables. So I think it's meaningful to talk about the Nordic energy market, where we're sharing integrated with the Swedish and the Danish. I think it's also fair to say that if it hadn't been for the hydropower in Norway, Denmark couldn't have accelerated its wind power that quickly because, again, a beautiful balance between the wind, and then when the wind stops, you need more energy, and then you can drop more water from the hydro power plants. Nice interplay. We're also now building, cables towards the UK and elsewhere to further provide this kind of stability and offer energy. But you're right, we are an energy nation, providing energy to millions of people every day.
I mean, as we've mentioned the UK, I mean, is it easier for you to deal with the EU as a sort of a total market, or would it be easier for you to deal with a country outside of the EU, as Britain will be? What makes more sense for you as a business? What will get you the best deal?
No, we don't have that approach. I think we believe that, you know, we have excellent relations with all the European countries.
Oh, absolutely. But there's a large single market of 500 million people. They can demand a better deal from you than Britain alone.
Yeah, but you also in the European market there are strict regulations on how you navigate those treaties. So, now, if this is a question whether we're supportive of Brexit or not, is it?
Right, yeah, okay. Are you supportive of Brexit or not?
No, so, you know, I think
I'm a
Norwegian and we're from Norway.
Nation.
We're also outside of the EU, but still, I guess the European Union and cooperation in Europe has brought great benefits to Europe and the European people. But then, on the same time, I think there's long traditions of cooperations, and I'm sure that we find a good way forward.
And Norway has recently been named the happiest country in the world, according to the UN.
Yeah. How
much of that is down to not being a member of the European Union?
No, I don't think so. You know, happiness is a very subjective thing, and you don't get that in a directive anyway.
Okay, but Statoil is a huge multinational. You've got fields all over the world. You have them in countries like Angola, for example. How do you make sure that your oil fields in Angola are hitting the same standards as, well, near Norway?
Yeah, so we try always to use the same standards when it comes to health, safety, business ethics, integrity, and also use the same environmental technology.
It's fair to say that the fossil fuel industry, when it comes to dealing with countries like, say, Saudi Arabia or Qatar, there have been scandals about bribery. Those standards haven't historically always been met.
That's right. We don't do business in any of those places, but so I'm not familiar with that. But of course, there's been scandals, and I think it's for us it's an important reminder to know that, you know, our industry is such a scale. We can create massive positive footprints with job creation, ripple effects, great benefits to societies if we get it right. But also we can bring great harm to nature or societies, and, you know, undermine governance structures if we get it wrong.
Payments.
If we get it wrong.
No, I mean, if there
So that's why we believe, you know, to be a good company is very important. To, you know, have a very clear ethical and value platform is terribly important. So that we spend a lot of time on that, actually, in training our people, working on having the right attitude and doing things what we call the Statoil way.
Because the multinational companies as a whole have a reputation, sometimes deserved, for shifting profits through different jurisdictions, you know, to avoid tax. I mean, is that something which, well, let me rephrase the question.
No, I get it. So do we do tax planning? Are we evasive? No, actually, I think we're a quite proud taxpayer. We think taxes are fair. We publish every payment that we do. We publish all the lists of companies, all the countries that we have companies registered in. We are very transparent about our tax policy. So I think if you're interested in this, check our webpage, check our financial reports, and you'll be amazed how much data there are.
Because there is some very interesting sort of moves in order to have this public country-by-country reporting.
Yeah, we're doing that.
And you guys are doing it, and I think extractive companies operational in the EU have to do it.
Yeah.
But the Googles and Apples of this world don't have to do it. Has it been bad for business, this transparency, or has it been good for business?
I think personally transparency is really, really important, and also it's a way of re-establishing trust, right, and to show that fairness is going on. We have been some have warned us, you cannot do that because you're going to be put at risk. Well, we have been bold and said we believe in this, let's go ahead, let's publish what we pay. Is it fair that businesses that run with profit actually contributes to society? I think so. and we are of course used to paying a lot of tax. I think there's too little discussion around the contribution of multinationals on tax, and some of the companies that we normally look upon like heroes, they pay a remarkably low tax rate.
I'd agree with you on that. I'm going to come to sort of my final question. If there was a big oil field discovered near North Korea, would Statoil be interested in exploring it?
No, of course we would never look for oil and gas in North Korea.
I mean, are there any despots or dictators that you definitely wouldn't work with? Because the European Commission sent 8 commissioners to Iran after the nuclear deal to discuss energy union, to discuss energy supplies. Now, you and I both know that in Tehran they still hang homosexuals from cranes. I mean, would that stop a deal with Iran for Statoil?
So we don't do any business in Iran. The questions on human rights. So can we do business in countries that don't respect human rights? And here, I think in the UN, they have agreed on the principles, so they call the Rugger principles on the division of labor between governments and business. So the main responsibility for business is to ensure that human rights are respected inside your value chain, which can be difficult in itself.
Sure, but an energy company, a big energy company, if there's a lot of energy, a lot of oil, say, found in a country which is run by a despot, working with that person would entrench his rule. He would be personally enriched.
Yeah, so there are incidents where we have been, raising issues of human rights, not only inside our business, but also raising that as an issue on a broader level, yeah.
Bjørn Otto, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.